All right, it's the beginning of the month, so it's time for me to do a deck tech on a deck that I'm going to run through a league for Pauper, competitive deck. This one is pretty straightforward. Let's get burning. Burn, baby, burn. Starting with the creatures. We got 4 Firebrand Archer. Both these creatures have similar abilities. Deal extra damage when you play an instant or sorcery. Firebrand Archer happens to do it anytime you play a non-creature spell, so it has a little extra versatility with artifacts and enchantments and stuff. It is a 2/1 for 2, so yes, it dies to everything. But if you have an empty board and can attack with it twice, pretty much every 2 times you connect with a Firebrand Archer is one less spell you have to cast. So don't be afraid to attack with the archers. If you have the opportunity, just turn them sideways. Don't try to think about it too much. If there's an open board, swing. It's worth it. Trust me. 4 of Thermal Alchemist taps to deal 1 damage to each opponent, which is nice because it doesn't. Both of these actually do each opponent, which is nice. But taps to deal damage to each opponent, but can also untap whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell. So this thing is the true engine of the deck. It's where most of the consistent damage comes from. It the card is a kill on sight if you have a removal spell. The Firebrand Archer kind of is too. I mean, obviously with only 8 creatures in the deck, if your opponent's holding the removal spell, they're gonna snap them off game 1, and sometimes they go down on them game 2, so you can get away with they sometimes live a little bit longer after sideboarded games. All right, let's move along to the instant and sorcery package. Burn is really consistent when it comes to being able to do 3-ish damage for 1 mana, occasionally with some upside. Starting out alphabetically with 4 Chain Lightning, 3 damage to target creature or player. At sorcery speed, opponent has a chance to pay 2 red mana and choose its own targets if they want to. It rarely comes up where your opponent has the 2 red mana and they're willing to spend it. 4 of Lava Spike, 3 damage to target player, sorcery speed. Ironically, I think the most well, in paper, the Chain Lightning's the most expensive card of the deck. A lot of the cost in the paper version of this deck are these 8 cards right here. Lava Spikes only had 2 printings. Kamigawa and Original Modern Masters. Chain Lightning's had multiple printings, but it's still like, $7 to $10 a card depending on where you pick it up. 4 of the OG Lightning Bolt. Not the OG artwork, but it's like the M10-ish artwork, but it's the OG, 1 red mana, 3 damage, instant speed. Just get it done. 4 of Needle Drop. Deals 1 damage to target creature or player that was dealt damage this turn. The best follow-up card in, the burn matchup is, okay, I lightning bolt you, then I can needle drop and draw another card, hopefully hit some more action just so I can keep the chain going. You end up running out of cards pretty quickly in this deck, and if your opponents are attacking you correctly, they're attacking your hand, not necessarily your life total, because once you're out of cards, you're just kind of there, like, okay, go. And yeah, it gets kind of awkward if you end up getting probed with kicker or hit with a Okaiba Gain Shinobi or whatever the black ninja that makes you discard 2 cards when it deals damage. 2 of Flame Rift does 4 damage to each player. You're usually, when you're playing burn, ironically ahead on life. So being able to get in there, 2 mana for 4 damage is pretty good. The fact that it hits you is kind of secondary. It's not that much of a big deal. Aura of Searing Blaze, which is 2 red mana for a deals 1 damage to target player and 1 damage to a creature that player controls. If you have Landfall, it does 3 damage instead. So if you played a land before playing the Searing Blaze, it does 3 damage. So there are times where you kind of sandbag that second land or that third land, just waiting for your opponent to play a spell so you can get the maximum effect out of the Searing Blaze. If your opponent's playing burn and isn't playing lands, it's not necessarily because they don't have it. Sometimes they're just sitting on a handful of Searing Blazes and looking to finish off a game. Or of Rift Bolt. 3 damage or 3 mana sorcery deals 3 damage to target creature or player. But there is not a better, there isn't a more iconic turn 1 burn play in Pauper where your opponent doesn't go mountain, suspend, Rift Bolt, go. It's like, go ahead and play your Delver. Especially if you're on the play and you can suspend a Rift Bolt, just suspend the Rift Bolt. Then they're like, okay, well, I could play this Delver and just get it lightning bolted without my opponent having to spend any mana. And you will always have the day's mana available to you. And 4 of Fire Blast. 6 mana, 2 of it red, deal 4 damage to target player or creature. Typically, this is your finisher. If you're ever actually casting it for its mana cost in a burn deck, you've probably already lost. Typically, what you do is you want to float the 2 red mana in case they have a dispel type, or not a dispel, but a spell pierce type effect or a daze, to where they can make you spend the mana. So you float the mount, you tap the mountains first for mana, you cast the spell by sacrificing those mountains, and typically shuffle up for the next game. Moving on to enchantments. We got 4, Curse to the Pure Start. This is the card that I am absolutely the lowest on in this deck. I want something better than this. The auto damage is nice, can help close out grindier games, but the 1 damage, and you get 2 of these online, you're doing 2 damage a turn, you can still lose through that. It's not 100%, you're not just going to win the game. If it said enchanted player can't gain life and it does 1 damage to that player at the beginning of their upkeep, that would be way different. But this thing is just, I think it's too slow for the format right now and probably should be a Keldon Marauders or something. Definitely not 4 of worthy. I could be not high enough on it, but with my playing and my testing, it just hasn't kind of played out. Lands. We got 18. We have 15 basic mountains. And yes, when I loaded up the league, I forgot to make sure all my mountains match. So here is a plethora of tilting lands that don't match. And it bothered me probably as much as it bothers most people. And it really bothered me. 3 Forgotten Cave. That just cycle for 1 red mana. And, you know, it's a tap land on turn 1. Not too big of a deal. Typically, you want to get one of your creatures down before you start firing off the spells to get that extra bonus going. But, you know, let's go ahead up here and take a look at the sideboard. I got 2 Enact Trickery to try to help shore up the fairy matchup. 2 Martyr of Ashes for stompy type decks and can be really useful against Affinity as well. You can get it down early, kind of hold a couple of spells back. You can clean up their board just by revealing 4 red spells from your hand and spending 2 mana. 3 Pyroblast to also help with the fairy matchup. If you're not playing against blue, you're a lucky person. Right now, it seems to be everywhere. 2 Flaring Pain to help close out certain matchups, like Circle of Protection matchups and stuff like that. The Flaring Pain can help you get through a big turn. 4 of Smash the Smithereens, because apparently you really need to beat down on Affinity. 1 Molten Rain and 1 Pillage to help with Tron. Sideboard, I think it needs a little bit more focused. Affinity's almost not a thing right now, so the smashes could probably turn into something else, or at least a couple of them. 3rd Martyr wouldn't necessarily be bad, or a 3rd Electrickery. There's got to be some other stuff I could be doing with red out here. But this is the list that I got. I'm going to run it through a league, see how that goes. It ought to be a quick one at least. So that's the thing. Thanks for watching the video. If you like what you saw, consider subscribing. You can follow me on Twitter @GeekLukeG This is Couch Troll Brewing.